Welcome to Charles Thorpe, all primary school students.
Today we are honoured to have with us an author whose books we all love to read.
We hope you enjoy the author talk and would like to introduce Kathy Cassidy to the stage.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me okay? Everybody at the back okay? Thank you so much for coming along this morning, and a very, very special thank you to the primaries who've come as well. I feel already very welcome at Charles Thorpe because for the last few weeks, for quite a few weeks, I've been having little emails and messages from some of the pupils who were attending today and also some of the teachers and librarians, which means that, you know, I kind of feel that I've come to a nice place. So thank you for making me feel welcome. I have quite a few things that I wanted to tell you about today. As you can see, my book Cocoa Caramel has just gone into paperback, and there's a new book coming in June I want to tell you about. I'm going to read you a little bit from this and tell you how I work, maybe how I come up with characters and ideas later on. And perhaps also how I became an author. All of that kind of thing might be of interest, but I think it's going to make sense as well if you have some time to ask any nosy questions, things I might miss out. So I'm going to kind of ask you to save your questions until the end of the talk. There's a quiz I want to do with you, a competition I want to tell you about, all sorts of extra stuff on the website that I don't want to miss out. So I'm going to just kick off and get going and see how we go. And I think the best plan really is if I can get one question out of the way right now, probably the thing that I get asked the most often whenever I go out and about and meet my readers around the country. And I am now right in the middle of a 2-week tour talking about Cocoa Caramel. So I've sort of been living out of a large suitcase for about 10 days. So yeah, I kind of have a lot to tell you. And I think I am going to start with this question. It's really usually from kids exactly like you who are a bit curious to know what I was like when I was at school and maybe what my favourite thing at school had been. And I think it's really kids trying to work out what makes an author, what kind of interests, what kind of skills might turn you into an author one day. So I think if I was going to make you guess, you probably would come up with something like English, and it would be a good guess, but it wouldn't quite be right because perhaps like a lot of you, I kind of loved the bits of the English lesson where the teacher would say, write a story, free choice, anything you like. That bit was perfect. But the bits to do with spelling, grammar and rules were not quite so perfect for me, so there could be one or two of you who might agree on that. And English I liked, but it wasn't my favourite thing. I don't know if there's anybody here who has maybe done a bit of background research and checked out my website, kathycassidy.com. Those people might know I went to art college, I trained to be an illustrator, worked as an illustrator and an art teacher. And those people would be thinking, okay, if it wasn't English, probably had to be art then. And that would be wrong again, sadly, because back at my old secondary school, we had an art teacher from just about the time of the dinosaurs, and his favourite thing was to get you to do endless still life drawings of cobwebby old wine bottles, and that was not a lot of fun. So I loved art at home, not so much at school, and it pleases me a lot to be in Charles Thorpe where I can see things are very different and that you do have an amazing art department. But it kind of made me think, well, what was my favourite thing at school? And I realised with horror that it hadn't been on the timetable to begin with. And that's always a little bit scary to admit to when you're in a school setting, especially when there are lots of teachers dotted around the hall. So the thing is, I have travelled quite a long way to visit you, and there's not a lot of point if I'm not going to be honest. So I may as well just come clean and admit it, because it could be that some of you have the same interest as well. My favourite thing at school was actually daydreaming. Do we have any daydreamers here? Hands up if you like to daydream. Yes! Leave your hand pointing upwards, please, if you've ever been in trouble for the daydreaming thing. Oh, I love this survey because pretty much wherever you go, the same thing happens. And for the beautifully behaved primary girls at the front today, I'm just going to let you know what happened behind you. Almost every single hand went higher. That doesn't surprise me. If you are foolish enough to daydream in school time, the chances are high that you will be caught. And that is exactly what happened to me, sadly. My reports would come home and they would say things like, Kathy could do well, but she dreams too much. And that's clearly not the ideal school report. So I would say probably my very first ambition in life, way ahead of anything to do with being an author or a writer, kind of went along the lines of how I could manage to daydream undetected during school time. And, you know, I know your lovely teachers have brought you out of lessons this morning for a very educational talk from an author. And of course the primary kids have come along on buses and all sorts for just that same reason. And this is the part of my talk where I'd really love to pass on my educational tips for how you can daydream undetected, because in the end I managed to work it out. But just looking very quickly at the faces of the teachers, I'm not totally sure that that's what they had in mind by educational. They look a little bit disturbed. And the other problem is that if I tell you my daydreaming tips while the teachers are listening, they're going to know exactly what you're doing. So that defeats the whole purpose. That's not going to work. Luckily, I've got a fallback plan, though. If anybody would like the daydreaming tips, all you need to do is email me through any of the links on my website. All of the links will come straight through to my laptop. You can say, I met you at Charles Thorpe today. Please, could I have the daydreaming tips? And I'll be able to pass them on safely and secretly, and teachers need not apply. And that ought to work. So that's the plan. And I'm not actually telling you this to wind the teachers up, although it can be fun to do that occasionally. And I'm not encouraging you to skive either. I genuinely think that daydreaming is something we should be doing more of, not less. Can you imagine if it wasn't illegal to daydream in school time, if it was actually encouraged and every school the length and breadth of Britain had its own special daydreaming room? You'd maybe walk into that classroom and your feet would sink into thick, soft carpet. You might sit back against beanbags and fluffy cushions, and there might be nice wafty music going on. And I think your teachers, because you're still going to need a teacher even for a daydreaming lesson, on a day like this, I think they'd come in with trays of hot chocolate and marshmallows and chocolate chip cookies, whatever it takes to get you in the perfect frame of mind for daydreaming. And in that lesson, all you need to do is switch off the front part of your mind, the bit that deals with all the logical, everyday stuff, because all that is useful in school, but you don't need it all of the time. And when you pull the plugs out on all of that, that's when the exciting stuff begins to happen. Random, unexpected, imaginative, creative ideas get the chance to shine. So after a couple of daydreaming lessons, maybe you might come up with an amazing idea for a character or a story or a poem or a song lyric, maybe a piece of music or a painting or a sculpture or a dress design or even just a recipe for the best chocolate fudge cake in the known universe. But trust me, daydreaming time is never wasted time, and I know that for a fact because I get paid to do it these days. That's what an author does for a living. You're kind of pulling the daydream from your imagination and pinning it down on paper, and if you're lucky enough to be a published author, you then get to share your daydream with readers all around the world, which is pretty cool. So there you go. That's the horrible truth about me when I was at school. Addicted to daydreaming, and the daydreaming is really the reason that I've become an author, because for me it was always about creating characters and stories.